There was a time when humanity believed the universe was built around it. The sky was a ceiling. Stars were decorations. The unknown existed only to be explained, named, and controlled. Meaning was assumed to be guaranteed. That belief did not survive curiosity. When humans first realized how vast the universe truly was, something fundamental shifted. Distance gained scale. Time gained weight. The idea of certainty began to erode. The universe was not waiting. It was not watching. It had been unfolding for billions of years without concern for who might eventually notice. Yet humanity noticed. This was not destiny, it was chance. Fragile alignment of conditions that allowed matter to think, to remember, to question itself. Consciousness did not arrive with purpose attached. It arrived without instruction. Humanity had to decide what to do with it. From the beginning, survival demanded attention. Fire, shelter, food, protection. But once survival stabilized, a deeper tension emerged. Humans began to ask not only how to live, but why. The sky became a mirror for that question. Every star represented distance. Every darkness suggested something unreachable. The unknown became both fear and invitation. As tools improved, curiosity extended farther. The sky was no longer unreachable, became measurable, predictable. Yet every answer exposed new uncertainty. Every discovery widened the gap between knowledge and meaning. The universe grew larger with every calculation. When humans finally left Earth, they crossed more than a physical boundary. They crossed a psychological one, beyond the atmosphere. The planet that once felt infinite became finite, vulnerable, contained. Everything humanity had ever built, believed, or destroyed existed within a fragile layer of protection, thinner than imagination had ever allowed. Seen from space, Earth does not look powerful. It looks temporary. This realization altered the definition of progress. Advancement could no longer be measured only by expansion. It had to be measured by restraint, by understanding consequences beyond immediate reward, by recognizing that survival beyond Earth would not forgive the same mistakes made on it. Space does not negotiate. There is no abundance, no forgiveness, no second chances granted by environment. Every decision carries consequence. Every system exists to preserve life against forces that do not care whether life continues. In this environment, humanity confronts itself without disguise. Distance strips away illusion. Titles lose meaning. Status dissolves. What remains is behavior, cooperation, trust, discipline. These are not ideals in space. They are requirements. The farther humanity travels, the clearer one truth becomes. Intelligence alone is insufficient. Without responsibility, intelligence accelerates failure. Without restraint, progress collapses into self-destruction. Time reinforces this lesson. In the universe, time does not revolve around human experience. Stars live and die on scales that render civilizations invisible. Entire histories occur in moments too brief to matter cosmically. Humanity exists in an interval so narrow that permanence is an illusion, yet awareness transforms this limitation. Knowing that time is short gives weight to choice. Every action matters precisely because it does not last. Meaning emerges not from duration, but from intention. The universe does not assign value, humanity must. As exploration deepens, humanity faces a future that offers no guidance. There is no guarantee of success. There's no promise of survival, no cosmic authority validating direction. The universe remains silent not because it rejects humanity, but because it does not operate on meaning. Meaning is a human invention. This realization changes everything. Exploration stops being about conquest, becomes about understanding limits. It's about deciding how to exist responsibly within vastness. About recognizing that expansion without ethics is simply collapse delayed. Future generations may never walk on Earth. They may know it only through memory and record. Their sense of home will not be geographic. It will be conceptual, defined by continuity rather than location. Identity will depend on shared values rather than shared land. This transition will challenge humanity's deepest assumptions. What does it mean to belong when there is no single origin point you can return to? What does heritage mean when environment reshapes biology itself? What remains human when adaptation becomes permanent? The answer will not be singular. Humanity will diversify. Environments will shape culture. Constraints will shape morality. But across every divergence, one factor will persist. Choice. The choice to cooperate rather than dominate. The choice to preserve rather than exploit. The choice to understand rather than ignore. These choices will define humanity more than any destination reached. The universe does not care which path is taken. It will continue regardless. But humanity will live with the consequences of its decisions long after the stars have shifted beyond recognition. And this is where the story becomes clear. Exploration is not humanity's purpose, it is humanity's test. A test of whether intelligence can coexist with responsibility, a test of whether awareness can survive without certainty, a test of whether a species capable of destruction can also choose restraint. There may be no final victory, no moment where the universe acknowledges success. There may only be continuation, choice after choice, generation after generation, quietly. One day, humanity may end, not in spectacle, but in silence. Structures will decay, signals will fade. The universe will absorb the absence without notice. But the absence does not negate what existed. For a moment in time, something fragile chose to understand rather than remain unaware. It chose to ask questions without assurance of answers. It chose meaning in a universe that offered none. The choice matters. Not because it is eternal, but because it was made. And as long as humanity continues to choose thoughtfully, not blindly, not aggressively, but deliberately, the story does not require an ending. It requires awareness. In a universe without instruction, that may be the highest achievement possible. And as humanity moves forward, it begins to recognize a truth that was once uncomfortable to accept. Progress is not linear. It does not rise endlessly. It curves, slows, pauses, and sometimes retreats. In the vast scale of the universe, advancement is not measured by speed, but by sustainability. The earliest civilizations believed survival was enough. Later, they believed knowledge was enough. Now, humanity confronts the realization that neither survival nor knowledge alone can guarantee continuity. Without wisdom, both become fragile. Space exposes this vulnerability with brutal honesty. Beyond Earth, there is no illusion of abundance. Every resource is finite. Every system exists under constant threat of failure. Life survives not because it is strong, but because it is carefully maintained. This environment forces humanity to confront responsibility not as a moral preference, but as a condition of existence. In space, neglect is fatal. Excess is dangerous. Carelessness is irreversible. These constraints reshape behavior. They demand foresight. They reward patience. They punish impulsiveness. Humanity learns, slowly, that restraint is not weakness. It is intelligence refined by consequence. As distances grow, the idea of return begins to fade. Missions are no longer temporary excursions. They become commitments that span lifetimes. Generations may be born, live, and die without ever setting foot on Earth. For them, the concept of origin becomes abstract. Earth is no longer a destination. It is a reference, shared memory. This shift alters identity at its core. Home is no longer where you came from, but where continuity is preserved. Belonging is no longer geographic. It is relational. It's defined by cooperation, shared responsibility, and mutual dependence. Isolation teaches this lesson with clarity. Far from Earth, the human mind adapts to silence in ways once thought impossible. The constant noise of urgency fades. Without immediate reward or distraction, attention turns inward. Reflection deepens. Emotions stabilize. The mind learns to coexist with uncertainty rather than resist it. Silence no longer feels empty, it feels honest. In that honesty, humanity confronts itself without narrative, without myth, without exaggeration. What remains is intention, choice, behavior repeated over time. This is where meaning forms. Not in discovery alone, but in how discovery is handled. Not in reaching new worlds, but in deciding how to exist upon them. The universe offers no guidance on this matter. It remains indifferent, vast, and unchanged. Meaning must be carried. As humanity continues outward, it becomes increasingly clear that expansion without reflection leads only to repetition of past failures on a larger scale. The mistakes once confined to a single planet now carry consequences measured across entire systems. This awareness marks a turning point. Exploration begins to slow, not because humanity cannot go farther, but because it chooses to understand more deeply. Observation becomes as valuable as movement. Preservation becomes as important as discovery. The goal shifts, not to touch everything, but to damage nothing unnecessarily. In this era, humanity begins to recognize that the universe does not need to be conquered to be known. Understanding does not require possession. Presence does not require dominance. These realizations are not imposed by the cosmos. They are chosen. And choice is the defining feature of consciousness. The universe existed for billions of years without awareness. It will continue for billions more without memory of humanity. But during this narrow interval, something rare occurred. A species became capable of asking not only what exists, but how it should exist. That question changes everything. As long as humanity continues to ask it not once, but repeatedly, across generations, the journey retains purpose. Not because it leads somewhere final, but because it refines how existence is lived. There may never be a moment of completion. There's no destination where understanding is total. There's no final answer that resolves uncertainty. The universe does not offer closure, but it offers scale. And within that scale, humanity learns humility. The realization that existence is brief does not diminish it. It intensifies it. Every moment gains weight. Every decision echoes beyond itself. Meaning emerges not from permanence, but from care exercised under limitation. And so the journey continues, not as a race, not as an escape, but as a deliberate engagement with the unknown. A sustained act of attention in a universe that does not demand it. Quietly, thoughtfully, one choice at a time. And in that persistence, humanity defines itself, not by how far it travels, but by how responsibly it exists within the silence that surrounds it. And over time, humanity begins to sense that the greatest challenge is no longer the unknown itself, but familiarity with it. What was once terrifying becomes routine. What once demanded awe risks becoming background. The universe does not change, but perception does. This is where awareness must be protected. When danger becomes familiar, caution weakens. When silence becomes normal, its meaning can be forgotten. Humanity learns that survival in the cosmos depends not only on adaptation, but on remembrance. Remembering why restraint matters. Remembering how fragile existence truly is. In the vastness of space, forgetting is easy. Consequences may take years to arrive. Damage may unfold slowly, invisibly, until it is irreversible. The universe does not warn, it does not intervene. It allows mistakes to complete themselves. Responsibility, then, becomes an act of foresight. Far from Earth, humanity must learn to think in timelines longer than a single life. Decisions are made knowing their outcomes may only be felt by generations yet unborn. This perspective reshapes ethics. Actions are no longer justified by immediacy. They are measured by endurance. This is a quiet revolution in thought. On Earth, urgency often drives behavior. In space, patience becomes the dominant force. Systems are designed not for speed, but for stability. Cultures evolve to value continuity over conquest. Progress is redefined as the ability to persist without collapse. Humanity begins to understand that growth has limits, and that respecting those limits is not failure, but maturity. As communities form beyond Earth, new traditions emerge. Rituals are created not to celebrate expansion, but to mark survival, to honor restraint, to remember origins. Stories of Earth are told not as nostalgia, but as instruction. Lessons encoded in memory, reminding future generations of what happens when balance is ignored. Earth becomes more than a birthplace. It becomes a warning, not a warning of doom, but of consequence. A reminder that intelligence without foresight can unravel itself. That abundance without care leads to scarcity. That power without responsibility accelerates loss. This understanding shapes how humanity approaches new worlds, not as blank canvases, but as systems already in motion. Environments that existed long before humans arrived and will continue long after they leave. Presence becomes temporary. Impact becomes permanent, and so humanity learns to move gently, to observe before altering, to understand before extracting, to coexist rather than overwrite. These choices are not guaranteed. They must be made repeatedly. Generation inherits not only technology, but the burden of deciding how it will be used. Awareness is not static, it must be renewed. In the silence of space, there is no applause for restraint, no reward for caution. These values survive only if they are chosen deliberately, without expectation of recognition. And yet something remarkable occurs. As humanity slows, its understanding deepens. By resisting the urge to dominate, it learns more. Patterns emerge. Relationships reveal themselves. The universe, once perceived as hostile or empty, becomes intelligible through patience rather than force. Not because it explains itself, but because humanity learns how to listen. Listening does not mean waiting for answers. It means accepting uncertainty without anxiety. It means observing without demanding meaning. It means existing without the need for validation. This state of being is rare. In a universe governed by entropy and collapse, sustained awareness is fragile. It requires care, humility, and discipline. But it also offers something nothing else can: perspective. The perspective that existence is not guaranteed, that awareness is temporary, that meaning is created, not discovered. As long as humanity holds this perspective, its journey retains value. Not because it will last forever, but because it is lived consciously within limitation. One day, even this awareness may fade. Cultures may forget, priorities may shift, silence may reclaim its dominance without resistance. The universe will continue, unchanged by the brief presence of those who once reflected upon it. But until that moment arrives, something important remains true. Humanity is here. It is aware, and it is choosing how to act in vastness, choosing how to treat what it does not own, choosing how to exist without instruction. And in a universe that offers no guidance, that choice, repeated patiently, responsibly, and quietly, becomes the truest expression of intelligence. Not loud, not triumphant, but enduring. And so the story continues, not rushing toward an ending, but unfolding deliberately. Shaped by awareness, moving through silence, one careful decision at a time. And as humanity continues, it begins to understand that continuity is fragile, not because the universe is hostile, but because awareness itself is delicate. Consciousness requires conditions. It requires balance. And balance, once disrupted, is difficult to restore. In space, there is no natural recovery. Systems do not heal on their own. Errors do not fade with time. Every failure leaves a permanent mark. This reality forces humanity to abandon the belief that progress can always be repaired later. In the cosmos, there is no later without preparation. This awareness reshapes ambition. Humanity learns to distinguish between movement and purpose. Not every direction forward is meaningful. Not every capability should be used simply because it exists. Power without intention becomes noise. Action without reflection becomes entropy. The universe, vast and indifferent, reflects this truth relentlessly. As exploration expands, humanity confronts a paradox. The farther it goes, the more it must slow down. Speed increases risk, expansion increases responsibility, complexity demands patience. The dream of infinite growth collapses under the weight of finite systems. This is not failure. It is understanding. Civilizations that endure are not those that expand the fastest, but those that regulate themselves. Those that learn when to stop, when to observe, and when to preserve rather than extract. In space, sustainability is not ideology. It is physics. Across distant habitats and long-duration missions, culture begins to shift. Celebration is no longer centered on conquest or discovery alone. It centers on stability, on maintaining life against silence, on continuity achieved through discipline rather than dominance. Rituals emerge to mark survival milestones. It's not victories, but balance maintained. Air recycled successfully. Water preserved. Systems held intact across generations. These become achievements worthy of remembrance. In this environment, heroism changes shape. The hero is no longer the one who goes farthest, but the one who ensures others can continue. The one who chooses restraint over recognition. The one who acts quietly, knowing their success may never be noticed, only felt through absence of failure. This quiet heroism defines humanity's mature phase. The universe does not acknowledge it. Stars do not shine brighter. Galaxies do not pause. Silence remains absolute. But within that silence, humanity sustains itself through intention. And intention is not inherited automatically. Each generation must be taught. Each must rediscover why care matters, why limits exist, why the universe does not forgive recklessness. Memory becomes infrastructure. History becomes instruction rather than nostalgia. Without memory, humanity repeats its mistakes. With memory, it refines itself. As humanity adapts to long horizons, it begins to think in probabilities rather than guarantees. Survival is no longer assumed. It is modeled, rehearsed, protected. Hope becomes pragmatic. Optimism becomes conditional. This does not diminish meaning, it sharpens it. Knowing that nothing is assured forces appreciation of what exists now. Presence gains weight. Attention becomes valuable. Life, once abundant and noisy, becomes something maintained deliberately against entropy. In this state, humanity begins to resemble the universe it inhabits. Quiet, complex, persistent, not in scale, but in rhythm. The universe expands slowly. Galaxies drift over eons. Stars burn steadily until they do not. Humanity learns to mirror this pace, to exist without urgency, to accept that most change happens gradually, almost invisibly. This acceptance reduces fear. Fear thrives on immediacy, on uncertainty felt too quickly. But when time is understood as vast, fear loses its urgency. Humanity learns to coexist with uncertainty rather than flee from it. This coexistence does not erase risk. It contextualizes it. As long as awareness remains active, as long as choices are made consciously rather than impulsively, humanity retains agency. It's not control over the universe that was never possible, but control over behavior. And behavior repeated over time defines destiny. The universe offers no destiny. Humanity creates one through accumulation of small decisions, quiet decisions, often unnoticed, often uncelebrated, but consistent. So the journey continues, not driven by expectation of reward, but by commitment to continuity. Commitment made not once, but repeatedly, in silence, without witness. In a universe that does not care whether humanity exists, existence itself becomes an act of intention. And as long as that intention persists, careful, restrained, aware, the story does not require an ending. It requires attention. And attention, sustained across silence, becomes humanity's most powerful achievement.